If you've ever stood in front of a tree and wondered where to start, sometimes to actually stand back and hesitate is a good thing. Pruning can feel a little bit like guesswork. But when you look at your tree over all 4 seasons of the year, the tree itself will begin to tell you what it needs. In the spring, this is one of the first trees that were full with a burst of flowers across this bank. So we absolutely love the Amelanchier for early flowers. And it's also a great tree that works in a whole range of gardens as well. And it's one of the few trees that will actually tolerate a bit of pollution. So if you've got a city garden, an Amelanchier multi-stem also works really well because it will tolerate a whole range of soils and grow really nicely. Today we're not actually going to do that much pruning, and that is quite intentional. It's that understanding what it does throughout the year is probably as more important than what we take off. With these trees as multi-stem Amelanchiers, winter now you can see the open structure, but now it's a lot clearer to see what needs to be taken off. So basically, a lot of the pruning that we'd be doing at this time of year is formative structural work. So, and with the bulk of these trees, they're absolutely fine. There are 2 though here that I'm going to do a bit more work to. And just to show you why, 2 years ago I let this big stem develop because it looked as though it was coming over in this direction. Now, if you can see, it's actually grown up because I didn't do this last winter. It's starting to rub. So it's actually rubbing against some of these other stems. Because this is the oldest, thickest main stem, I'm actually going to leave that one in with this. And I'm going to remove the smaller stem and I'm going to take it back to an outward facing bud lower down and see if I can get it to shoot in a different direction. Because I missed this last year, I now want to open this back up. The key thing to bear in mind is it's being very selective with what you're actually cutting. I always find it very handy to keep stepping back and looking at the shape and the structure of the tree before you start cutting. And if we're looking at some of these trees behind me, there's very, very little that needs to actually come off. Some people can get very carried away when pruning and attack the entire tree. With Amelanchier, it's very much about restraint and timing. So if we're looking at the stem here, we can then follow it up and you can see the new flower buds that are just starting to form at the tips. So all of these shoots will be covered in white snowy blossom flowers for the spring. Because it flowers on the older wood and the older wood will then produce the shoots that produce the flowers, if we were to prune this very hard now, we would lose this flowers for this season. So that's where the restraint comes in. So if you can imagine all of these buds that I'm pointing to now on this stem, all of this is flowering growth, ready for this spring. We'll try and put a few clips out of some of these when they were in flower earlier on last year. But all of that is going to be absolutely smothered in white blossom, so we really don't want to lose that branch. With the early flowers, they're also providing pollen and nectar for the early bumblebees and early pollinating insects. And again, that's then leading on to forming the berries once they've been pollinated, which is then providing food for the birds. So if you were to prune hard, you're not just changing the shape, you're changing the whole nature of the tree and what that tree is going to give back to the wildlife and insects for the rest of the year. Okay. So I've talked a lot about the flowers. Amelanchier also have some fantastic, lovely rounded green leaves. But in the autumn, it really comes into itself because they then start to take on fantastic shades of gold, orange and red. So it's got some lovely autumn colour, which creates a real fireworks against a sunny sky in the autumn before the leaves fall. When it's in leaf in the autumn still, if you were pruning then, you were actually weakening the tree. So the best time of year for doing any pruning and shaping on Amelanchier is always over the winter when it's dormant. And the key is not doing too much. So what we're looking to do is to create light and air and movement through the tree, but not to hollow it out completely. Basically, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to move up the stems and remove any dead shoots, anything that's been damaged during the course of the year. Again, any suckers that would be coming from the base of the tree, we trim back. So any tiny little shoots coming from the base. One of the beauties with Amelanchier to create the multi-stem is that it does send up lots of shoots from the base of a tree. And again, that's how we form the shape, but it's just about control. So anything now, I'm more than happy with the number of stems I've got here. And this is a lovely tree, so I don't want any more shoots to develop at the base. So anything that comes from the base now is going to be removed as a sucker. The key is to decide which branches are going to provide the most blossom and fruit for this year. And at the same time, I want to cut out and stop the rubbing shoots where I can. If you look at the shoot here, you can see that during the course of the year, as this one's grown, I don't know if you can see it from that side, this has actually got a rub mark. So if you look, it's got a couple of points on it just here where it's been rubbing back against the main stem, where the wind's brought it across. So because that's been rubbing against the main stem there, I'm actually going to take that out, which is then going to give me a more open habit for the centre and allow a bit more air movement. As I say, some of these, I don't want to be doing too much to it really, but all I want to do is I want a nice open bottom structure to the tree. And again, anything that's dead or damaged or diseased, I would take off. I just want to take off any little shoots that are growing into each other. Where I've got dense shoots growing into the centre, I'm actually just removing those, and anything that's pointing out to the outside, I'm going to leave. It's always trying to balance the flowers against the structure of the tree. Actually, it's quite a forgiving tree. As long as you're pruning in the winter, if you do make a mistake and think afterwards, oh, that's it, I've done it, it will grow back. So it's quite a forgiving tree. So if you take anything from today, it should really be get to know your tree, watch it over the year, because it's not just the winter that we're pruning for. We're also wanting to consider the entire year. So be that the flowers, the berries, the green cover in the summer, and then autumn fireworks when the leaves turn in the autumn. It's the whole year we're planning for. Thank you for bearing with us for another wet week. If you like what we're doing, then please hit the like button and let us know. Thank you for watching. Come on, good lad. A bit.